What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the Fantasy Slant, brought to you by Pro Football Focus. I am here with our usual Pro Football Focus crew, myself, Brandon Marianne Lee, Nathan Jahnke, and Daniel Kelley. Brandon, it's news just dropped this morning, and we're going to take a trip down memory lane that Daniel just brought to us, this attention. Percy Harvin is making a comeback. What's your take on this? You were pretty adamant on your stance about this, so I'm going to give you the first shot.
Yeah, you know what? I've always been a Percy Harvin hater, so I will just continue. As far as fantasy production is concerned, he's never had a 1,000-yard receiving season, and he hasn't been fantasy relevant in years. In fact, he hasn't gone over 700 yards since 2011. So, listen, I mean, he'll be fine, as far as like maybe real football, and they certainly need people over there. They have injuries like crazy, but he retired for a reason. I think this is a red herring for fantasy owners, and he may have one big game still in him. Who doesn't if you're a professional athlete, right? But as far as deciding when that'll be, I have no interest in partaking in that.
Gotcha. Daniel, what's your take? Because you're the one who told us about this news. What's your take on Percy Harvin? Is he someone that we're going to get to it, but what's your take in general?
I mean, I think Brandon sells him a little short. He was the number 7 receiver in 2011. He didn't have 1,000-yard receiving, but like you said before we went on air, he had several rushing yards. He had 300-something rushing yards that year. Even 2014, 2 years ago, he had 700 yards from scrimmage all told across 2 teams, missing some games. I'm not picking him up right now unless I'm in a 16-team or deeper league. He's signing with the Bills, and it's the one team in the league where any receiver who's there is going to be interesting because they don't have anybody. I'm not counting on Robert Woods. I'm not counting on Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. That's what I'm saying. It's almost maybe it might be out of necessity. Guys, we're going to be discussing every single waiver wire edition and this week. And this week is a big one, so I don't want to waste too much time talking about Percy Harvin. We'll touch on him as we go, but this is a big waiver wire week. We're going to break it down. We all have our rankings here in regards to, what our waiver wire selections would be. And there's some interesting things I'm picking up, even starting with the quarterback position. There's not really many quarterbacks we could talk about adding. I mean, if Josh McCown's out there, I do like him to be added. But he's one of our streaming options this week. So when we do our waiver wire show, I unless there's like a quarterback that's like a must pick up, I just want to talk about streaming options in the waiver wire show because that's ultimately what QB streamers do. So Nathan, let's talk about your number 1 streaming option this week. You have Ryan Tannehill down against the Jets. I remember it was one of the other weeks we talked about Tannehill, and the reason you liked him is because you felt that there was a team that wouldn't be able to put pressure on him. I believe that it was Pittsburgh that they were playing, and you said you have to like Tannehill when they don't put pressure on him. What makes you think in this game that the Jets won't get to Tannehill, or why do you like him so much?
It's a very similar reason to what you just said. I don't think the Jets can get pressure on him. PFF pass rush rating, the Jets have the worst pass rush in the league this year. And Tannehill, he's averaging 9 yards per attempt when he doesn't have pressure, a 6-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So the Jets not only probably won't get too much pressure on him, but their secondary hasn't been great either. So I could see Tannehill having a big game.
Yeah, I think that Jay Ajayi is going to be a little overplayed this week in a lot of places. The Jets, they stopped the run extremely well. But even having him in the run game, it should open it up for Ryan Tannehill, shouldn't it, Brandon?
I mean, sure, he has 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in the last 4 games total.
Oh, we know you love Ryan Tannehill.
I mean, you do you. I don't. Listen, I have him as my what do I have him as my second one because the Jets are that precarious on the other side of the ball, but still, Ryan Tannehill is there to break your heart. Just prepare yourself. He's a perfect GPP play. He is a perfect, desperate Hail Mary. But other than that, it's really hard to rely on production from Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, so the Jets are allowing over 300. They're actually 302 passing yards per game. That's the highest in the NFL, which is probably why some of like us here like him. But my number 1 option this week is Josh McCown. So Daniel, I'm going to talk to you because you're totally against me. You have him as your number 4 option. I actually really like Josh McCown this week, especially, looking at the fact that Corey Coleman's coming back, Terrell Pryor seems to be getting healthier, Morris Claiborne's probably going to be out for this game. Why don't you like Josh McCown?
This isn't fair because it's Tuesday. There's a chance. If you tell me right now that we know McCown is getting the start and playing the whole game, I'll probably bump him up a little bit. I think they might go to Cody Kessler. There's no future in Josh McCown. If you want to be competitive this year, sure, fine, whatever, run him out there. What do the Browns care about being competitive right now? They might as well see if Cody Kessler can be anything, and he's supposed to be healthy this week. If he plays, obviously McCown's worthless. So my low ranking on McCown right now is hedging my bets.
Well, to be fair, so did the Browns think when RG3 went down that they were still going to win anything this year? I don't think so, and I think that's why they went to McCown. So Kessler, he stepped in.
I think McCown's better than RG3. I disagree.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think that they wanted to give the most upside to Hugh Jackson's offense with running the ball and the multi-threat option with RG3. But what I'm saying is that they had McCown on the depth chart over Kessler. Now Kessler, yeah, he looked fine. I don't think he severely downgrades the passing attack, but at this point, why even hold on to Josh McCown if you're not going to play him? That's my take on the situation. I think that he's going to play. I think it would benefit Kessler. Yeah, he played, but I think it would benefit to watch a veteran like McCown run the offense for a little bit, get right. I just like Josh McCown. If he's starting against Dallas, I do think he's my number one streaming option. But Daniel,
I also changed my mind because of the Jamie Collins trade. That makes me think they're trying to win at least one game. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think they're going to put all in. No, I'm serious, though. I think they're going to go all in and try to at least get some sort of momentum going. And if I didn't feel that way, then I would be more worried about Kessler. And again, I think that Daniel makes a great point. It could be either way. But to me, it was a huge upgrade for the receivers, for everyone on the team, on the offense. There's no way to deny it. I actually tweeted out Josh McCown for president. You know, that's going to be the only political tweet I put on my fantasy handle. And I'm telling you, I was all in. I was like, yes, let's keep this going. So as fantasy owners, I don't just want Josh McCown to start for my team. I want him to start for all of my options that are on the Cleveland Browns. They just all raised up a little bit. And no offense to Cody Kessler, you do you, but I just think they need to win one game with Jamie Collins and Josh McCown, and then
I think Josh McCown gives him a shot to win every single week. I think that he can provide a spark to the offense. I think getting Coleman back helps everything. And like I said, the Cowboys are going to be without Morris Claiborne, might be without Barry Church as well. So there's a lot of injuries taking place there. I think that the Cowboys were playing a little bit over their head as well on defense. So I like him. But, Daniel, let's talk about your number two option. You have Colin Kaepernick down as a solid streamer this week against the Saints. Talk about it.
Well, Kaepernick has the highest floor of just about any quarterback because he runs the ball. The Saints might be getting Delvin Breaux back this week, might not. If you're putting all your eggs in the we're getting Delvin Breaux back basket, it's not a great basket. The Saints still have an awful pass defense. So if I'm streaming, generally speaking, if I'm streaming, I'm going for a high-floor quarterback to begin with because you are already hurting at the position and you need at least a few points. So I'm going Kaepernick's floor, add in the potential ceiling of going against the Saints defense, and I mean I like that better than one of the other options I'm sure we'll get to, somebody like Joe Flacco who has no ceiling at all as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think Flacco's in for some touchdown, some positive regression in the touchdown category. But one player that had a pretty bad, I would say bad. Yeah, I would say bad. It was a game last night against my beloved Bears. Sam Bradford played against them, and the Vikings offense just looked awful. The touchdown didn't come until the final 2 minutes. The offensive line is starting to show its colors. Now they lost Boone last night. I don't know what happened with him. I haven't seen the injury report. But Nathan, you seem to like Sam Bradford an awful lot this week. Is it just because they're playing the Detroit defense?
Oh, yeah, a lot of it has to do with that Lions defense. I said the Jets have the worst pass rush by PFF ratings. The Lions have the second worst by PFF ratings. So part of why Bradford didn't look good last night is the Bears' pass rush was just on top of things where I don't think Detroit's pass rush will be. So I think that'll definitely help Minnesota's offense get back on track a little bit. So that's why I like Bradford more than someone like Flacco or the Cleveland quarterback.
It's funny, I tweeted out a stat yesterday where every NFL team is in between 57% and 68% allowed completion percentages to opposing quarterbacks, except for two teams. The one is Denver. Denver's only allowing a 53% completion ratio to opposing quarterbacks, but Detroit is allowing almost 74% completion ratio to opposing quarterbacks. So it just kind of goes to show, and they were without Darius Slay last week, so it just goes to show how bad Brock Osweiler is playing right now. I really did think he'd step up and play somewhat better against that like the Detroit defense is just something you should walk all over, but he didn't. I think that we would. I don't know if we need to talk about Joe Flacco very much. He seems to be one of the lower ones on our consensus here, but it seems like our top 2 consensus quarterbacks this week are Ryan Tannehill and Josh McCown. If you're looking to stream quarterbacks, but Brandon, I want to start with the running back position. Like, I want to get into that because there's a lot of wide receivers, a lot of running backs we need to touch on. So I want to go right to the running backs, and let's talk about your number 1 option. You have Charkandrick West down there. Please tell me why you have him over Derrick Henry.
Well, because DeMarco Murray is still the starter, my friend. I love you, but you are completely off your rocker. It is not going to happen every week that he's going to have a juicy matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars who decide to stop playing football in the middle of the game, or at the beginning of the game, really. And DeMarco Murray has to spend a couple snaps on the sideline hurt. That was a very specific set of circumstances, although I did, give you a shout out. I was like, way to go, Mike, your guy. I don't have a problem with Derrick Henry. I think he's a fantastic athlete, and he certainly makes the most out of his touches. And I want to make sure that everyone has him as a handcuff and on their team. But I also want to start whoever is the starter for the Kansas City Chiefs in that backfield every week. So far this year, that's been Spencer Ware. Spencer Ware is currently in concussion protocol. That would then make Charkandrick West the next man up. And I think that if they prepare for that, it's going to work. And then as far as Jamal Charles, the setback is very disturbing, and I don't think you can count on that. So for me, this is about the system. The system is ripe for fantasy points. This particular week, they go up against Jacksonville, who made Derrick Henry get some options. So hopefully they continue in that way, and we can get Charkandrick West going. But yeah, I just think, again, this is about opportunity, not skill. And I love all you Derrick Henry believers. You got 1 game out of him. Congrats. And he does have the skill, but the opportunity is nil with DeMarco Murray. No.
I don't think that even last week, I don't even want to take a stance on last week for Henry's game because I didn't expect it to happen while Murray is still healthy. But my concern is that Murray doesn't stay healthy. He missed 12 games in the previous 5 years. He's been known as somewhat of a fragile running back. He's racked up over 180 touches.
Unfairly known as a fragile running back. He's taken a lot of hits and a lot of carries.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Once you do that, you're prone to injury the more touches you get. So to see him get as many as he's had this year, he's over 20 touches per game. That's a lot. And to see him pull up, like he pulled up lame on the sideline, he threw the ball down. He was flustered. My thing on this, so he did come back into the game. He did not look the same when he came back in. He went for an MRI. They said it was precautionary. Now they're saying that they are going to monitor his practice time. And that just tells me he may be dealing with some sort of plantar fasciitis, some sort of turf toe, something like that, because you don't send him for an MRI if he's not feeling some sort of pain. So for me, I think Derrick Henry, the reason I grab him first is because Derrick Henry is a league winner if something happens to DeMarco Murray. Charkandrick West, this is my stat on Charkandrick West for the day. In games where he has not reached 18 touches, he has never recorded over 64 yards. He has never scored in those games. In the games where he sees 18 or more touches, he averages 124 total yards, averages over a touchdown a game. So if Spencer Ware is in fact out for this week, love Charkandrick West as a spot starter. I love him. But for me, if I'm looking at the waiver wire, I want a league winner, a potential league winner, and I think Derrick Henry is that. Daniel, what's your take on the whole Charkandrick West versus Derrick Henry situation?
Well, you just totally set them up as completely different options, though. That's so yeah, of course I agree with you. Duh, I'm talking about this week and playing Charkandrick West because Spencer Ware is going to be out. So I think he's going to get 18 touches. Of course, I'm not going to play him on a lark, and I don't think he's hello.
Okay, so we agree. Hold on. So we agree that Derrick Henry is a better pickup. He's a better pickup. Well, West is a better pickup for this.
I think he's a better insurance policy, and Charkandrick West is a spot start for this week when 6 teams are on bye.
That's the thing. We've got Jordan Howard, Jeremy Hill, Giovanni Bernard, James White, LeGarrette Blount, David Johnson, Rob Kelly, Matt Jones, Lamar Miller, all off this week before you even get to injuries. I love Derrick Henry just like you, Mike, but if you're picking somebody up this week, it's going to have to be somebody you can play. And if you're playing Derrick Henry, you're taking a big leap, whereas Charkandrick West, there's a good chance he's getting that 18 to 20 to 25 carries, whatever it is. So I love Derrick Henry just like you, but this is not the week.
And I agree. And by the way, if we hear more about Murray, as far as I saw, though, the toe MRI was negative. I just don't think they're going to go away from him unless they have to. But you're right. If we hear that Henry's out, Derrick Henry, yes. I think we all agree, actually.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we didn't hear about Amari Cooper's plantar fasciitis until after the year. There's a lot of things that these teams hide, and that's my take on it. When he was out of bounds, players don't slam their helmet down. They don't slam a ball down when they're just upset because they sprained their ankle or something. It's when they're upset because they're injured, and you could just tell DeMarco Murray was flustered about it. And I think that before the season started, we thought that Derrick Henry would be in more of a timeshare. I was actually one that said DeMarco Murray was probably going to be the 80-20 back. I didn't see them throwing a rookie in there, but he's looked good in his limited time. There's no reason that they need to give DeMarco Murray as many touches that they have been. I just think it's going to be a bigger timeshare going forward. Nathan, you're the tiebreaker. Which way are you leaning, man?
Well, it's the same thing that we've been saying. If we need a running back this week, it's West.
Shenanigans. You got to take a side, Nathan.
I need to win a game this week, so I'm going West.
My favorite
battle.
There you go.
My favorite part here is how Brandon and I agree. Mike's on the other side, and he calls Nathan the tiebreaker. It's already 2-1, man.
Yeah.
Well, not a tiebreaker. Well, he could have made it.
But again, there's nothing to untie. We all agree.
Shenanigans. All right, so Nathan, I think we got out of the way that conversation. Let's talk about another player you could pick up this week, and one that some people might say you might want to pick up over Charkandrick West, because we don't know if Spencer Ware is, if he's going to be cleared to play, if he's not. So Charkandrick West could essentially be for nothing. What about Tim Hightower? Tim Hightower is a guy he's going to be, sounds like, more involved in the offense. What's your take on him?
I'm a little concerned about him. I know he played a lot. He could very well play a lot going forward, but I could see this becoming a timeshare. I think Hightower, if he plays really well going forward, he could take over that job. But I wasn't all that impressed when he was playing this past week. He had a nice 28-yard run, but on his 25 other carries, he was averaging less than 3 yards per carry. Didn't look all that great in pass protection either. So I could see Hightower also losing these snaps. So he's definitely a speculative ad because he could be the guy for the Saints going forward. But I could also see him just as easily losing that job.
Yeah, well, this is a week where they're playing the 49ers. Just so you guys know, opponents going against the 49ers, they average over 30 carries per game, not touches, over 30 carries per game. So this could be a week where both of them get plenty of touches. Honestly, the benching, I know a lot of people were saying, oh, well, Hightower fumbled. Why didn't he get benched? I think it was a cumulative thing with Mark Ingram. I think it was just that he's been playing like crap this year. He's averaged under 4 yards per carry in 5 of his 7 games. He's just not getting it done. He's not, not necessarily playing great around the goal line. Tim Hightower is just he was actually the guy that was on the most fantasy championship rosters last year. That's a little fun fact. But coming into this week, he hadn't topped 5 carries. Brandon, what's your take? Would you feel good starting Tim Hightower this week?
I wouldn't feel great about it, but again, there are just so many people that are on bye, so I could understand that absolutely. In San Francisco, running on San Francisco is just such a delight. It's difficult to get too upset about it. Listen, Mark Ingram has 89 carries, 22 catches on the season, and 21 missed tackles total for only 50. Anyway, he's not elusive. He's fumbling. He's not breaking away. There's no upside for Mark Ingram. That's the problem. If you can figure out a trade, I'm more interested in the trade value of Ingram than I am in picking up Tim Hightower. I'm a little more into Rob Kelly. I'm a little more Charkandrick West for a 1-week wonder. And then even to Derrick Henry as a handcuff. I just feel like there are better options that I feel a little bit better about because they're just passing the ball all the time in New Orleans. So even if they did go with Tim Hightower, the usage is just so small compared to what we were hoping. I don't know. I just don't feel great about it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And, Daniel, I'm going to go to you, and I like the segue here because Brandon just brought up Rob Kelly. Rob Kelly is number 2 on your list here. Tell me why Rob Kelly is somebody that we should pick up.
If no other reason, his last name is Kelly with an EY, and that's wonderful. There aren't enough of us out there. He looks better than Matt Jones. I mean, that's it. Matt Jones has had some big games, but I have yet to see a time where I've watched Matt Jones and say that's a good NFL running back. Rob Kelley, a superstar by any means, but he has looked better than Matt Jones. He's performed better than Matt Jones. He's broken more tackles than Matt Jones. They're off this week, so that kind of goes against my you're going to have somebody for this week plan. But why, if you're Washington, why would you stick with Matt Jones, who has looked bad consistently? Give Rob Kelley as much of a shot as you can, and then that's a number one starting running back. I would love to have him.
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I would say that Matt Jones hasn't played. I don't think that he's played great. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's played bad this year. Nathan, you have Rob Kelley all the way down at number 5, so that tells me that you're more on the page with me, where we're not excited about Rob Kelley. Could you explain why you're not excited about him?
Yeah, like if I was Washington's coach and had control over it, I would put Kelley in over Jones right now, but I don't think that's what they will do once Jones is good to go. I could see them splitting time on running downs, and then Chris Thompson is still going to play those passing downs, so that's roughly 50% of the snaps for Washington already going to someone else. So I could see Kelley at most seeing those 50% of snaps, but if Jones gets in a timeshare with him, that's going to be even less. So I don't think that's enough touches, and I don't think Kelley performed well enough to warrant getting all of the shares over Matt Jones.
Yeah.
I have a question, though. It's interesting because Rob Kelley got 21 carries last week while Kirk Cousins was just passing all over the place, right? So the whole offense was just firing on all cylinders. Matt Jones has only had over 20 carries once all season long. So I'm wondering why the coaching staff felt so comfortable with Rob Kelley's first real start, giving him 21 carries, even when they were passing the ball well, when they wouldn't do that with Matt Jones. Do you think that's maybe an indication of something, or am I just reading into this the wrong way?
I think this is more of the fact that so Matt Jones wasn't active, so you only had really 2 running backs rather than splitting the carries between 3 running backs. And on top of that, this is a game that went into overtime and went the distance. So it went all the way to the end of it's almost they played 5 quarters. So if you were to take out, I don't know how many carries he had in overtime. I was doing shows during that time when game was on. But I mean, I think it's a situation just to monitor. But Nathan, I want to stick with you though, because you actually have your number 2 selection on the waiver wire for running backs. It comes down to Peyton Barber and Anton Smith. I want to know. I have my take on which player I think you should pick up, but I want to hear about yours first. Tell me why you would grab one of these Tampa Bay running backs.
I think, first off, I think one of them will be starting because Jacquizz Rodgers got hurt, and the Buccaneers already added a running back to the active roster. So I think that's a pretty good sign. Rodgers is not going to play this week. I believe it's a Thursday night game as well. And Anton Smith is the guy who saw the vast majority of the snaps once Rodgers went down with injury. We haven't seen a ton of Smith recently, but when we last saw him a lot was 2014, and he was making huge play after huge play. So I think he has at least some big play potential. It's against the Falcons defense, who's been fairly average to below average this year. It's Smith's former team, so there could be that revenge factor as well, which is more narrative than actuality, but I want to talk about it anyway. But I think so many running backs that are either on bye weeks this week or injured, I could see Smith seeing a high percentage of carries, and there's not very many running backs who are doing that these days. So every Buccaneers running back so far has done well, so I could see Smith doing well as well.
Yeah, no, once Dirk Cutter said that he wanted to run the ball more, he is stuck to that. I went through and looked at the numbers that they've kind of done as a team. They've totaled 96 carries over their last 3 games, 10 receptions on top of that. So their running backs are averaging over 35 touches per game in the last 3 weeks since Cutter said that. And the reason that I am 100% with Nathan on this one is that Anton Smith he's played almost identical amount of snaps as Peyton Barber. Barber hasn't seen a single target. Anton Smith has seen 5 targets. And when you're talking about a Tampa Bay defense, that's a funnel defense that's going to allow points to Atlanta. That there's no 2 ways about it. They're going to allow points, and they're probably going to be behind in this game. And you have to kind of predict that game script. Anton Smith is the one that's being used in the passing game. He's the one that's probably going to be on the field for, I'd say, 60-70% of the time. So I think he's a solid start. Brandon, what do you say?
Yeah, I really like it. Also, you guys, Tampa Bay has New Orleans in week 14 and 16 for your fantasy playoffs. Get them all. Get them all. And I'm wondering, and I want to ask Nathan specifically about this. Do you think that people should trade for Doug Martin? Do you think that he's coming back soon? What's happening with all this? Because he's still, I mean, it's hard for me because I'm like, are they going to stick with Antone Smith, do you think? Or at least like keep him involved, even if Doug Martin comes back due to his injuries? Because that's a juicy playoff matchup.
Yeah, I haven't heard the latest of Martin's injury or when he's expected to come back, but my guess is if Martin is 100% healthy, they probably wouldn't play him 100% of snaps because they know he can't do that. So I could see Martin playing 60 to 70% of snaps, and then whoever the number 2 running back at the time playing the other 30 to 40%.
So this could be a forever ad. Antone Smith's getting these targets, right? I mean, this could be you could ride him through the playoffs, especially if he's getting those targets. So anyway, I'm excited.
They also just re-signed Mike James. I agree with everything you're saying, but I wonder if it's going to be too much of a committee situation for us to really dive in on.
Yeah, I mean, I would worry about that more so if they didn't give Jaquiz Rodgers as many touches that they have been. And Jaquiz Rodgers is nothing that to write home about. He's not a historic talent or anything that demands you give him touches. So for me, I'm not totally comfortable, which is why I'd probably start Hightower over Antone Smith, but I still think that he could be a solid flex play for your fantasy team. And it's against the Falcons defense that, honestly, they struggle in the receiving game against running backs. And a lot of that comes from teams like the game script and the way kind of games go, where teams are passing a lot more against the Falcons than they would be, against any other team. I want to talk about one more running back before we move on to wide receivers. Daniel, what do you think about CJ Procise? Was this a sign of things to come? Before the season, they talked about using him as a wide receiver. And, his yards per catch kind of shows that he can be used in that way. With Kristen Michael struggling a little bit, what do you think about CJ Procise? Oh, is Daniel there? All right, so Daniel, I don't know if he can't.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear Daniel.
Everything was breaking up on my end.
All right. I was asking you basically about CJ Procise and what's your take on him? All right. So it seems like Daniel, we're losing him. All right. So Nathan, let's just jump back over to you. I want to ask about CJ Procise. Is he someone that's going to be will he warrant flex consideration going forward?
I think in the right matchup he could. I think he is seeing a little bit more share of the offense. He did see more targets. He saw 4 targets this past week and did a good job with it. So I could see him seeing an increased amount of carries and targets going forward. I wouldn't be trusting him to start right now, but I would definitely consider adding him if you're in a deep enough league and don't need someone specifically for this week, just to see how that situation carries out going forward.
Brandon, what do you think about Procise?
I think he had one good game at New Orleans. I mean, I don't know what else we can, read into that yet. I'd like to see more before I'm dedicated to him moving forward. I don't know what's going on with Thomas Rawls and his fibula. I'm more concerned about Russell Wilson. It's a disaster, you guys. The Russell Wilson injuries are legit concern. I don't know what else to say about that. It's a serious problem. So, I mean, I'm glad that he did well at New Orleans. I think this is interesting. If you're in a dynasty league, you were like, oh, thank God he's not going to be completely useless. But other than that, I don't know. It's tough for me. I put him and Deion Lewis because my problem with Deion Lewis is that James White and LeGarrette Blount are doing a great job. I just don't know why they would need to change right now, and especially if he's still dealing with injuries. So that's why those two are at the bottom of my list. But I mean, hopefully it goes well moving forward, but it's tough for me. Russell Wilson really scares me.
I like what Brendan said there, talking about Russell Wilson and the fact that he has in the entire offense. They're just not scoring points, and it's a concern. And honestly, by the time that Procise gets so involved, Rawls might be back, and then it might even be more cloudy than it is now. Yeah. So that's, I think, why we all are a little bit down on him. We've also talked about Deion Lewis seemingly every single week. I wanted to make sure we touch on him just because, he's actually practicing now. Nathan, do you think that he's just going to automatically be inserted back into this offense?
I could see him getting inserted for a couple plays here and there, but I don't see him having a big role unless he starts really either outplaying Blunt in the running game or outplaying White in the passing game, but I don't see that happening. So I think they'll give him a chance, but I don't think it'll be a huge chance.
Well, I'd like to say why mess with the chemistry of a team, but then again, the Patriots did just trade away one of their best players. So I don't know. It's tough for me to say. You can never predict what Bill Belichick is going to do. But guys, let's take a moment here and get some word from our sponsors. All right, guys, now that we have covered a gajillion running backs that are potentially, there for the taking, let's talk about some wide receivers. It may not be as big of a wide receiver week, but it still is pretty big. Brandon, let's talk about yours. Who do you have here at number 1? Corey Coleman. I know we talked about him last week, and we got into this big conversation, and we were all aboard Corey Coleman. We were trying to work to get Brandon on with us. Are you fully aboard the Corey?
I was on Corey Coleman. It's just if you have 6 teams on bye and someone's not playing, I'm trying to be logical. I am a pragmatist to a fault. We're in this like dynasty league where I just drafted everyone who's actually playing football. And it just, I said, I was like, why isn't anyone drafting Matt Forte? It's like the 12th round. I was like, all right, I'll take Matt Forte. I know it's dynasty, but come on now. He's playing football. So I want you guys to get as many fantasy points as humanly possible. And I knew that a lot of you were in a dire position and couldn't roster Corey Coleman during a bye week. But he was at practice. I love Corey Coleman. I interviewed him at the draft. He had 21 touchdowns at Baylor last year. He's fantastic. I mean, the guy is out of control. He just has a nose for the end zone. He has a nose for these long catches. If Josh McCown is playing, I'm all in. I'm more nervous if Cody Kessler's playing. I'm not going to lie to you. But hey, I'll even play him then. I think he's a fantastic ad this week now that he is back. But when he's not back, I'm just all about points, baby. I'm all about points.
Yeah, I want everybody to get in on the ground floor of this hype train. Like, it's starting up again. We were talking about him last week. He's my number 1 ad. Corey Coleman, he only played 1 game with Josh McCown, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's going to be fantastic. And yes, I agree with you, Brandon, that I think it's a slight downgrade if they do go back to Kessler. But I still don't think it's that bad because this Browns defense allows so many points that they're going to be throwing quite a bit almost every single game. So I think Corey Coleman, he's an actual NFL, like, legit starting wide receiver.
Yeah.
But Nathan, you don't have him at number 1. You want to talk about the guy who you have at number 1?
Sure. I have J.J. Nelson of the Arizona Cardinals. This past week, he got the start, saw 65 of 71 snaps for Arizona, saw the most snaps of any of their wide receivers, 10 targets in that time, caught 8 of them for 79 yards. He also had 2 touchdowns. So I'm guessing some people, if you have to bid for him, I could see some people overbidding because of those 2 touchdowns, since I don't think he'll be that consistent scoring touchdowns going forward. But I do think he'll continue to see a lot of playing time, continue to see a lot of targets. So if it's more of a priority waiver wire, I would definitely put a bid in for him, since I could see him being the guy that everyone wanted Floyd or Brown to be in Arizona.
That's the crazy part to me. I'm not too interested, and Brandon, you're going to end up being the tiebreaker. The reason I'm not too interested is because Carson Palmer, he hasn't really looked like a good quarterback this year. There's only been 2 games where he's actually, provided value, and that was against one was the Bucs, and they're a funnel defense, and then the Panthers, who are putting out backups on the field. So I don't really trust Carson Palmer. They just lost their left tackle, Jared Beldier, for the year. He was just sacked 8 times last game. J.J. Nelson's a down the field receiver. His average depth of target is 19 yards. I see J.J. Nelson as the 4th option in this passing game, and that's at best. I would say that David Johnson's number 1, Fitzgerald number 2, John Brown, and then J.J. Nelson. So, I mean, for me, I'm not excited about him, and I'd rather give the headache to someone else because I think there's going to be so many up and downs. But what do you say, Brandon?
Well, I think that we need to take note of the fact that the only healthy wide receiver is the guy who's older than everyone else in the National Football League.
He's not even that healthy.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so J.J. Nelson's going to get opportunities. I think that, where he is in the pecking order depends on who's injured that week. That's part of the problem with this offense, right? But I agree with you. Carson Palmer is off. There's no doubt about it. You look at his passes, you look at their fluttering. There are a lot of issues that are going on there from a technical aspect. Also, Carson Palmer, not exactly a spring chicken. But I think that the thing about J.J. Nelson is that he is dynamic and he will get opportunities based on the fact that none of their wide receivers can stay healthy. I'm incredibly concerned. I'm happy that they found the sickle cell trait for John Brown, because hopefully now he can, assess these, symptoms and maybe better take care of whatever needs to take care of for that particular trait, right? Michael Floyd has just been... Yeah. The touchdowns have covered up how badly he's been playing. There's no doubt about it for fantasy owners. So I have no doubt that the Cardinals are considering what they can do in terms of getting him less touches and J.J. Nelson more. So I'm with Nathan on that. I think that it ends up that there's just such a huge rotation of injuries that I think J.J. Nelson works in every week somewhere based off of that.
I think we're shaping up to see one of the biggest steals in free agency. I do think Michael Floyd's going to end up going somewhere and he's going to do something there. And I said it before the season started that I wanted him to go to the Packers to replace Jordy Nelson, because Jordy Nelson's towards the end of his career. I want Michael Floyd in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, and I do believe that he's going to be undervalued this
Green Bay
offseason.
never takes free agents.
I know they don't, but they have so many holes.
They
in their
did Jared
now.
Cook. Look how that worked out. They're going to be gun shy forever now.
I don't even know who told them to grab Jared Cook.
I don't know either.
Okay, I don't want to get upset. I want to talk about a player I would take over, and I'm going to ask you guys. It seems like you guys would not, but the player I would take over J.J. Nelson, I would grab Kendall Wright. Kendall Wright, yeah, he's only had one game where he's played more than 38% of the snaps, so that is a concern. However, with Andre Johnson retiring, hopefully it gives him a few more snaps, because they were playing Andre Johnson quite a bit. I mean, it tailed off the last couple of weeks, but finally that's happening. Tajay Sharp, I believe that Wright's going to surpass him in the starting lineup sooner rather than later, because Tajay Sharp has been playing awful. There's only been 4 games in which Kendall Wright and Marcus Mariota have played together where Wright has seen 5 targets or more. In those games that he's seen 5 targets or more, he averages 69 yards and he's scored a touchdown in every other game. I just think that there's so much splash potential with Kendall Wright. He's a former number 1 pick. Marcus Mariota is playing the best football that he has of his young career. Nathan, what's your take on Kendall Wright? Do you see where I'm going with this and why I think that Kendall Wright could be a high upside waiver wire addition?
I could see him as the high upside if he does surpass Sharp on the depth chart and start seeing a lot more snaps in 2 wide receiver sets. But so far, he just hasn't been in on those snaps. He's only been seeing time in their 3 wide receiver sets. I think he's really dependent on if he sees more playing time, because right now he's very dependent on that. There's only been 2 games this season where he's had more than 15 yards in the 5 games that he's played. So I think he is more of a speculative ad. He's not someone I would trust to start right now. But if he does start seeing more snaps like we would like him to see, then he definitely has more potential down the road.
All right. The one I'm kind of taken back by, and I need to understand this one. So I have Kenny Stills down here at number 9 as my number 9 wide receiver pickup. So I'm not high on him at all. Brandon's number 8. But Nathan, you're at number 3. Is this basic? I'm guessing that this ranking has to do with the matchup this week against the Jets.
Yeah, it's a lot more. I'm in leagues where I need to win right now, so I need someone who can score me the points this week. And this week, I think Stills can be that guy. Unlike Wright or some of the other guys we might talk about, Stills is seeing 90+% of snaps, so he should be on the field to get the targets. He's had some games where he's been complete bust, 3 games where he's had 20 or fewer yards, but in the other 4 games, he's had either at least 75 yards or a touchdown. He has that big play potential, and especially against the Jets, that's one team you're going to get big plays against. So Stills could be that guy for the Dolphins to get the big plays. So I can see Stills having a big game because of that.
Yeah, no, I can see where you're going with that. I like the spot start ability. I just don't think I'd want him for the rest of the year. Yeah. Brandon, one player that I kind of gave you a hard time about last week that I apparently apologize for.
Eat some crow, baby.
Yes, is Russell Shepard. Brandon said that she liked him as a cheap DFS play on the Thursday show we do with Roto Grinders. And I said, well, I don't know. He's not playing very many snaps, Brandon. I'd be careful. And then all he does is score touchdowns. Go ahead. Talk about Russell Shepard.
Well, this actually goes to, and this is why you pay attention in the preseason, and this is why you listen to half listen to beat writers when they're talking about practice and what's going on. Russell Shepard was a young player that Tampa Bay was excited about. They wanted to get him more involved. And, once it became very clear that this Vincent Jackson thing is not going to happen, I think that they decided to start putting him in more. And he has been, outperforming Adam Humphries, pretty much weekly. And again, the touchdowns, they're looking for him in the red zone. And the thing is that, let's see here. Mike Evans is obviously the number one guy, but last week they shut him down. They did everything they possibly could, because the problem is that Jameis Winston may be the most predictable quarterback on the planet, right? He's going to throw to Mike Evans. He doesn't care if he's quadruple covered. So now they're saying, all right, man, look at the number 2. Let's go to Russell Shepard. So they're going to have to do this more so that they can open up Mike Evans. I think that became very clear to me. And I think it became very clear to all the defenses in the league, frankly. So, I just think that he's someone they're excited about. They're getting him more involved each week, going in again to the playoffs, 14 and 16 against the Saints. You have to like that matchup. So if you're going to be just kind of doing this dart throw anyway at the bottom of your depth chart, I just feel like he's a guy who's always going to have touchdown upside. And when you're doing those like random things because you're desperate, I'm a touchdown upside person. And I know a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are more into, other metrics. But for me, that touchdown is where it happens. Otherwise, I'd rather have someone get a touchdown than like 40 yards.
Nathan, I'm going to let you argue with her because you have him as your last wide receiver. So I'm going to let you state your case, and I'll be the deciding factor.
Yeah, I'm concerned about him just because of his playing time, mostly this past week. Cecil Short saw more pass routes than him. Adam Humphries did. He only saw 14 pass routes in the game, only saw 3 targets. So I think short term, I'm a little concerned because I don't think he practiced yesterday. So I'm not sure he'll see much playing time this week because it's a short week and he wasn't practicing for whatever injury he has. And then long term, I think there's just other players that I would rather take a gamble on because I don't know if he will see more playing time in Tampa Bay. And while I think he'll see some playing time for sure once he's 100% again, if he's only the third option in Tampa Bay, there are other teams where I'd rather have their third option, like Tennessee.
All right, so Brandon, I'm sorry I have to do this again, but the reason that I'm not
at your own risk, you do it.
So I want to believe in him, and I actually believe in the player. I think that he should be on the field over Cecil Shorts, but for some reason, Tampa Bay does not. He only ran 14 pass routes this week. He's only playing, he's under 40% of snaps every single game. So for me, they don't consider him a full-time player yet. That's why I'm siding with Nathan on this one, but. One player that I have no idea why everyone is so low on, and I'm not going to say low, but Brandon, you're going to have to make your case against me because Chris Hogan is a stud. So going back to – Chris Hogan is my number 3 ad behind only Corey Coleman and Kendall Wright. Tom Brady – listen to these stats. Tom Brady went targeting Chris Hogan. 11 for 11, 269 yards, a touchdown. He's playing the Brandon LaFell role in the offense, in which we know that can produce wide receiver 2 numbers. If you guys recall, back in 2014, Brandon LaFell was the number 15 wide receiver from week 3 forward. He was better than Julian Edelman. As a matter of fact, speaking of Julian Edelman, Chris Hogan has 33 more yards than Julian Edelman, 1 more touchdown. He's done it on less than half of the targets. Edelman has 57 targets. Hogan has 25. I think he's earning more of a right in this offense every single day, earning the trust of Brady. You have to love a receiver catching passes in this Patriots offense, especially one that's on the field for almost every single snap. So, Brandon, tell me why Chris Hogan is not a better ad than, say, Russell Shepard.
Well, I think that he is. I think you have to put in more money for him. He's on bye this week. Then he goes to Seattle. In the playoffs, he faces Denver. I just think that when it goes to how many points I'm going to get rest of season, there's no doubt about it. He's definitely has been the more reliable receiver and is more points. This was also, a big game against Buffalo, which, by the way, the last time he played Buffalo, he got 0 points. Now, of course, the quarterback situation was very different then. Let's just say different and leave it at that. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I just feel like the fact that there are 3 weeks out of the remaining 7 that I don't feel comfortable starting him is why I pause. It's not that he's not a stud. I completely agree with all the stats that you said. But for me, this is about the long game, and I'm a little bit concerned.
Okay, that makes sense. Nathan, you're going to be the deciding factor here. I like how we're doing this with the 3 of us. Now we actually have a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Who wins?
Well, I'm probably more concerned about him than excited for him. I would definitely want him on my team if I have the roster spot, but he saw more targets in the 4 games without Tom Brady than he's seen in the 4 games with Tom Brady. I'm just concerned about how much they're getting him the ball. Once they do get him the ball, he's done really well, and hopefully that leads to more targets because of that. But if he's only seeing less than 3 targets per game on average since Brady's been back, I can't really trust anyone if they're only seeing 3 targets per game.
That is definitely the concern, is that the target share hasn't been there. But I just think that comes with time. I think that Tom Brady has to trust him. They hadn't worked very much together. You know, Tom Brady's only been back for 4 weeks. He couldn't practice with the team for a long time. So, I mean, we saw it in the preseason. Hogan and him hooked up a couple times. So, I mean, I like Hogan. I love him. I just think that he offers upside over someone like – so you guys are seemingly pretty high on Tyreek Hill. I got to be talked into this one. I feel like I'm against you guys here because he's never played more than 34% of the snaps, so he's playing even less than Russell Shepard. He has 4 touchdowns on 58 pass routes. That's a touchdown.
Amazing.
That's a touchdown every 14.5 routes. Some guys don't score a touchdown every 14.5 targets. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't. So tell me, I don't know, Brandon, you go ahead and start. Tell me why Tyreek Hill is somebody that I should consider adding on my fantasy teams.
Well, I think this is also, is Nick Foles going to start? Right, because Nick Foles likes to air it out. Obviously, Alex Smith does not. Let's put it that way. Whenever it comes down to average depth per target, Alex Smith is always at the bottom of the barrel along with Matthew Stafford. So you might as well just say no go. The thing is about Tyreek Hill, every week he has some breakaway run where you're like, the Chiefs have to recognize this. They have to play him more. And he has been playing more. I mean, this week, 5 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. I think that this is, where they want him to be moving forward. I think that they every week are going to get him more and more involved. It's also opening up Travis Kelce. It's opening up the run game even though there were injuries last week, so they weren't able to really get, what they needed to get going, but that was because of injuries. I think that Tyreek Hill's talent just screams out more playing time to me. I just cannot see this continuing.
Nathan,
but maybe I'm wrong.
Nathan, what do you think? You track the snaps a lot of the time, so tell us what your thoughts on Tyreek Hill are.
Yeah, I'm very similar in my thought process there. I think he's someone who's been playing very well on a low sample size of snaps, and ideally his snaps do increase going forward. It's not like Albert Wilson or Chris Connolly, the guys that he would take snaps from, had been playing all that great. So I think the opportunity is definitely there for him to take snaps. So he's not someone that I would add this week to start like some other players we talked about, but I think he's someone where if you're playing more long-term game, he's someone you can add. And also, one quick thing while we're talking about Kansas City, about 5 minutes ago, the Chiefs signed Bishop Sankey, so that's probably a sign their other running backs outside of West aren't healthy enough for them to play soon. So I think that's an even better sign that West is the guy that you want this week at running back.
Bishop Sankey resurgence.
I can't handle it. I can't get any more Twitter questions about Bishop Sankey. I'm OD'd from last season.
I've held Bishop Sankey in my dynasty leagues, hoping that he would get a shot somewhere. And Andy Reid, I guess that's the best shot possible. I mean, but he's buried. I'm not going to talk about Bishop Sankey. Real quick, I just want you guys to give me your take on Percy Harvin. Is he somebody that you would add over some of the receivers we talked about, or no?
No for me.
Nathan?
Only over Russell Shepard.
Oh my God! Highlight of the show right there. That was just
only
like
over Russell
it was
Shepard.
like a nonchalant only over Russell Shepard.
I also really do like Dorial Green Beckham moving forward.
Yeah, Dorial Green Beckham. He's somebody that I wanted to touch on, but there were so many names this week. Dorial Green Beckham. He's played over 50% of the snaps in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's still being outsnapped by Aguilar. That's what worries me. He saw a season-high 9 targets this week. So is there something that you wanted to mention about him, or is just you're excited you think he's a high upside stash?
I think that primetime game was a wake-up call for the coaching staff. I think they're going to be taking more chances. They got to just let Carson Wentz get some interceptions, for crying out loud. The average depth of target, the yards per reception, everything was just so low, and it was absurd. They completely shackled him so that he couldn't do anything to get that offense going. And I think one of the things they're going to do is incorporate Dorial Green-Beckham more, because Nelson Aguilar can't be trusted. I think that his snaps will go down and Dorial Green-Beckham's will go up.
Carson Wentz has been trending down. He hasn't looked very good over the last 3-4 weeks. It's a little worrisome.
I think it's play calling. I think it's a little unfair. It's really bad.
Yeah, it's really weird what they're doing with Ryan Matthews, and I just don't know if I like Doug Peterson as a coach right now. I just don't know if I do. But let's talk about some tight ends. There's actually a few names here. We've been kind of struggling to get some names at tight end. We talked about C.J. Fedorowicz last week. He came through well against Detroit, as kind of we expected him to. But another game playing against him was Eric Ebron. Nathan, what do you think of Eric Ebron going forward? Is he someone that we've all forgot about? Someone that, a lot of people were expecting to break out this year. He has seen at least 5 targets in every game he's played, so that's got to be a good starting point, right?
Yeah, I think he's someone that, since he's been injured, we've forgotten about him a little bit, but I think he will continue to see a lot of targets each week. I'm not sure I'm super excited for him, since I'm not sure just how good he will do in those targets, but there's so few tight ends that are consistently seeing targets that you definitely want him over a bunch of other tight ends just because of those targets.
Yeah, Brandon, what's your take on Ebron? Is he talented enough to get into that tight end 1 conversation?
I mean, he can, except for the fact that he has Minnesota coming up twice in a bye week. So over the next 4 weeks, he's going to be rough sailing. And the guy's never played 16 games in a season. This year, obviously not even close. So you're always worried that he's going to get re-injured. But certainly on a week-to-week basis, he's a great play. He's great in DFS. But for your season-long and waiver wires, for me, I would rather have C.J. Fedorowicz, who needs to be there as a crutch for Brock Osweiler, no doubt. But certainly, yeah, Eric Ebron on a week-to-week basis will be a great play for you if you have the roster spot.
So I think we would all agree here, and it's one name that I talked about with Jeff Ratcliffe on Sirius just a little bit ago. We both came to the decision that we would drop Zach Ertz for both Eric Ebron or C.J. Fedorowicz. Do you guys agree with that?
I just tweeted out one of the greatest mysteries in life is what happened to Zach Ertz.
He's dead.
I mean, I don't understand. Yeah, of course. I would drop him for a lot of people. I mean, a lot.
Nathan?
I would have a tear in my eye while I was doing it, but I would do it.
One name, and I want to know how he's sliding under the radar, because nobody really has talked about him. And some of the waiver wire things I've seen pop up is Austin Hooper. Jacob Tamme went down with an injury. It looked gross when it happened. Like, it looked like it might be a collarbone shoulder injury, which could take some time for him to get back from. They're saying that Austin Hooper is going to be the starter now. Austin Hooper has done really, really well in limited targets this year. He's only seen 12 of them, but he's caught every single one. He's averaging 2.67 yards per route run. Of tight ends with at least 10 targets, he is second only to Rob Gronkowski. Do you guys think that Austin Hooper could legitimately have tight end 1 upside if Jacob Tamme were to miss significant time? Nathan, let's start with you.
I think first off, if you need a tight end specifically for this week, if you have a tight end on a bye week, I think Hooper is a good option. My only concern with him is if the Falcons really liked where he was right now, I think Hooper would have been seeing more playing time already, and it wouldn't have taken an injury to Jacob Tamme in order for him to get that playing time. So that's probably my biggest concern with him. But since I do see him seeing that playing time for however long Tammy's out for, I think Hooper is a decent option for however long that time is.
Yeah, he played 73% of the snaps this week with Tamme getting hurt early on. Brandon, what's your take on Hooper?
Well, the reason why he's flown under the radar is he has 3 games of 0 points and 2 games of 1.4 points.
Yeah.
So
well, he was playing a backup role.
Yeah, but that's 5 games of no points.
Well, think of it like Antonio Gates, who is not very good at this point in his career, getting hurt and then establishing an opportunity for Hunter Henry, who, by the way, did pretty well.
Oh, of course. But, I mean, I don't want to act like we're shocked he's been under the radar. That's
Right.
for good reason. I mean, that's
true.
all I'm saying. It's just, yeah, of course he's been under the radar. He hasn't done anything. He has 1 touchdown on the season. Now, certainly this is a high-flying offense. If he's going to be the starter, he always needs to be considered. Absolutely. You start everyone from Atlanta who's starting, or you at least have them on your team. So, yeah, absolutely. Now that Jacob Tammy's out. But certainly up till this point, I'm not upset that he hasn't been on my team.
Yeah, Jacob Tammy's the only one I would probably say don't start because he's just not very good.
But he still is getting points. Tight end is very ugly this year, you guys. Tight end is ugly.
It is. You take targets where you can get them. One player who might be returning to some targets, I really don't know. I'm not excited about him. Maybe you guys could talk me into it. Ladarius Green has popped up on the radar. He started practicing. Are you guys, Brandon, are you excited about Ladarius Green, or is he somebody that you let someone else deal with it?
No, I remember one of our preseason shows where we talked about Austin Seferian-Jenkins. To me, they're in the same category.
Okay.
Just weird talent, athleticism, whatever that means. Those ambiguous words that we use for big guys who can move a little bit just drives me crazy because it's not about productivity. And then, when you take into account their injuries and the fact that there are question marks about, their work ethic and their team and things like that, it's like those things do not go well hand in hand. If you told me he was injury prone, but this guy is like first guy at practice, last guy to leave, what have you, I'd be like, okay, well, he's going to work himself back. He's going to work himself in. I didn't get that impression. I thought the whole preseason talk with him being concussion maybe, or maybe an ankle, end of his career, might retire. Then it was like, oh, I don't know where that came from. Well, it took you 2 weeks to clear it up. Why? I just thought it was bizarre. I think there are better options. We just listed 3 guys that I would rather have for sure. Rest of the season. Yeah,
Nathan, are you excited about Ladarius Green even if he does return?
I'm a little excited about him. I think he's someone where if I'm in a league with a lot of backup spots and I'm already pretty bound to make the playoffs, then I think Green does have some small chance to do really well at some point in the future. He, over the past couple years, has been one of the better tight ends in yards per route run, even though he was mostly a backup in San Diego. We were excited about him a little bit when he went to Pittsburgh, getting in with Ben Roethlisberger in that offense. So definitely not someone I'd want on my radar to start these next couple weeks, but I do think he has the potential to do really well if he does see the snap, starts to take over the starting role, and that would be the opportunity where he would do well, but there's at least a small chance.
Well, I have a fun fact on the new Jared Cook, a.k.a. Ladarius Green. Like everybody wanted him to go somewhere else. I don't know why. Phillip Rivers has always loved his tight end. Ladarius Green has never topped 81 yards receiving. Actually, over the last 2 years, he didn't even top 64 yards receiving. Hunter Henry accomplished that feat in his first 6 games as a pro. Hunter Henry is better than Ladarius Green. I don't care what anybody says. He's going to be better than Ladarius Green. I think he is the new Jared Cook. So for me, I want nothing to do with him. But that wraps up.
He's athletic, Mike.
He's athletic.
He's athletic.
So is Jared
It's
Cook.
like they're all athletic. They're in the National Football League. I always giggle when people are like, his athleticism. I'm like, yeah, he's in the NFL.
So is Jared Cook.
I respect that. Yeah.
No, man, that's going to wrap up this show. Nathan, you want to go ahead and give away your Twitter handle?
Sure, it's PFF_Nate Jahnke. That's PFF_NATEJAHNKE.
And Brandon, you want to do the same?
Yeah, it's at Brandon her FFB. That's BRANDON. Guy's name, I'm a girl. Her FFB is in fantasy football, and you have to follow Nathan because he does all the snap counts and he's amazing.
Absolutely. Twitter is one of the most underutilized tool in fantasy football. It's one of the best tools in fantasy football that a lot of people still don't use for some reason. Make sure to follow myself at Mike Tagliere NFL. Until next time, guys, lights out.